J. Kelly is a hero of cinema.
J. Kelly.
What do you say to people who say you only play yourself?
I think what you do is magic.
You know how difficult it is to be yourself? You try it.
Hi, my name is Ben, and today we are talking about a movie about Hollywood, which I know. I have a feeling so many of you hear that it's a movie about the movies, and you instantly just think, oh, is this another Hollywood jerk-off movie? I don't need to see Hollywood jerking its own chain here. I don't need to see George Clooney patting himself in the back for being an actor and how hard it is to be an artist, and all of that. I find it so interesting that this Noah Baumbach film, J. Kelly, has been seen as the definition of that, because when I watched the movie, I thought it was the exact opposite of everything that I just mentioned. This is in no way a movie about how glamorous Hollywood is, how great George Clooney is, how hard it is to be an actor. That is not the point of this movie. And I think people fundamentally are now having this response to a movie like this, that they know is in the Oscar race, that they know comes from an important filmmaker, that's talked about in this kind of important lineage of movie stardom, and how it's a movie about a rich white guy who's very handsome, who's adored, and he's having a hard life, and everyone's just like, okay, that's not relatable. Like, who cares about this story? And when I watched J. Kelly, I found it to be an incredibly relatable movie. None of us are George Clooney, obviously, but what the movie is truly about. J. Kelly, which I wrote in my own words, is a movie about how easy it is to be so steadfast in the determination to achieve professional success, only to realize you've left everything and everyone behind, and now you just have to live with that. Like, that's the consequences of life. And thematically, the movie J. Kelly and what Noah Baumbach is exploring with this film is regret, feeling unsatisfied with work, and also what those feelings do to people around him. In this order, J. Kelly, the person played by George Clooney, is a movie star first, and then he's an actor, and then he's a father. And what Noah Baumbach does so well as a director is it never lets J. Kelly off the hook. I don't think it dislikes J. Kelly, the protagonist, but it definitely never sides with him. It understands that he is a flawed man and he has a lot of failures in his life, including as it comes to with his relationship with his daughters. And this film just doesn't have resolution because life is messy. Life doesn't have resolution. And that's what I found pretty remarkable about J. Kelly, a movie that personally I really enjoyed. And I really enjoyed Noah Baumbach leaning into this level of content, understanding what it just means to be content with life and to kind of accept it, and how hard it is to accept your failures, your misunderstandings of life. That's why I find this criticism of J. Kelly being a movie about Hollywood and being a vanity project for George Clooney a bit absurd. It's quite literally the opposite of that. It's not a celebration. It's a very sad, it's a very profound, quiet character study of the most charismatic man in the world. Fundamentally, George Clooney is one of our greatest movie stars. He's an incredibly charismatic talent. He's pretty universally beloved. And we also understand that he has a bit of a facade, that he is presenting the best image of himself. And I want to now kind of talk about the George Clooney of this all, because this movie doesn't work without George Clooney. I don't know if there's any other actor that you could have gotten to play J. Kelly. One, because this character, Jay, is clearly a stand-in for George Clooney. It's very closely mapped to George Clooney's real career, how we understand him in his professional life, how we understand him in his personal life, how we understand him as a figure of tabloid news, and how we understand this classical movie star charm. There is this great moment, it's one of my favorite moments in the film, which this film follows J. Kelly rediscovering his roots and wanting to connect with his daughter. So he goes on a trip to Europe to essentially get a Lifetime Achievement Award. And all in the span of this weekend, he's really trying to make amends with everyone from his life. And there's this moment where he's on a train in, I want to say it's France. And he's with all the patrons on the train. And he's just charming the pants off everyone. It is movie star charisma weaponized to 1,000%. He's very handsome in this scene. He's very slick. He's very cool. He's incredibly charming. And that's what he does so well. What George Clooney does so well as Jay Kelly in this movie is how effortless those scenes feel. What I think makes George Clooney such a popular movie star is how personable he feels and how approachable he feels. For lack of a better word, I've always kind of found George Clooney to be a pretty regular guy. And this scene on the train, it's an awesome scene because it summarizes that Jay Kelly very well. He is playing for everyone else, and then everyone who should be the people that he loves the most are kind of on the sidelines watching him do his shtick. And the tension that comes from that. His daughter seeing that and being like, well, why didn't you have that real charm with me? Why didn't you have that connection that you apparently have with millions of people in this world? How come you can't have that with me? What is it about our relationship that doesn't allow you to do this? There's another excellent actor who comes into this movie, Billy Crudup, who plays Timothy. He's a former college friend of Jay. This scene is wonderful. This is kind of the big moment of the first act. And this is where flashbacks of the film begin. This is where we start to understand who Jay is, how he became a famous actor, and how he got recognized at the expense of his friend, and this resentment that it builds. What I loved about these moments with Billy Crudup and George Clooney is how Noah Baumbach defines movie star. And this is a movie about movie stars, something Noah Baumbach has always been interested. He has always tried to work with some of the biggest stars in Hollywood. And he usually gives them great dialogue, which I think he does in this case. But what I love about this is, for lack of a better word, it is Noah Baumbach exploring when somebody has it. When somebody has that it factor, and how everything just kind of seems to melt away with that. You have this character of Tim, this younger version of Tim, played by Billy Crudup, who doesn't have that. He's beloved actor by all of his peers, but in auditions, he's just not Jay Kelly or George Clooney in this case. That's what the movie fundamentally explores in stardom. Some people have it, and most people don't. And in Jay, and specifically in George Clooney's case, they become so insular because of it. You can't be George Clooney and be normal. You can't be George Clooney and be a regular person. You can appear that way to me, but in reality, you're George Clooney. You will always be George Clooney. You will always look like George Clooney. You will always be beloved because you are George Clooney. You're always going to be protected because George Clooney is a business. It's an enterprise. That's the same thing with the Jay Kelly in this movie, and that's what I love that this film explores, and the cost that it does to people, the damage that it does to other people's life, how impossible it is to find the ground, and how impossible it is to make sense of the world because everybody lies to you because you're Jay Kelly. Even if you insist, hey, tell me the truth, they can't. It's an impossible barrier to penetrate. Which brings us to two other performances that I loved in this movie, Adam Sandler and Laura Dern. Sandler plays Ron, Jay's manager and friend. Laura Dern plays Liz, Jay's publicist. And their relationship with Jay is both personal and professional. And their professional and personal lives revolve fully around Jay Kelly. They are there for him. They have to protect Jay at every turn. And it comes at the expense of their own life, their own relationship. Ron, played by Sandler, is loyal to a fault. Liz is becoming cynical of the Jay Kelly orbit. And I want to talk specifically, which I want to say both of these performances are great. They have great chemistry together. Sandler and Laura Dern are electric every time they are on scene. But I want to spend time specifically singling out Adam Sandler in this movie as Ron, who he just shines under any Noah Baumbach direction. He is somebody that feels so natural delivering Baumbach dialogue. And it's because Baumbach is a very humanist director. He captures something real, and I think he captures something awkward through comedy. And in this, I think a lot of us can relate to the character of Ron and his humanity, because we've all been Ron at some point in our life. We have all been a friend who cares too much for somebody that considers you a friend and yet doesn't show or reciprocate that level of love or affection. And that's what the Ron character is dealing with in this movie. He calls himself Jay's best friend, and Jay calls him supposedly his best friend. They're supposed to be inseparable. And yet, there's obviously this one power dynamic that's very different. Two, Ron as a character is taking 15% of Jay Kelly's earnings. And three, there's also this other element of Jay just is so insular and so about his own ego that he just can't let Ron fully into the orbit. That doesn't mean that he doesn't care about Ron. I don't think Jay Kelly dislikes Ron or doesn't even view him as someone like important. Like, he clearly views Ron with a lot of affection, but it's not equal to what Ron has to give him. And what Jay doesn't understand is how much Ron has to give him and how much he has to hide it, because it's his job. It's his quite literal profession. It's not all personal, even though a lot of it is personal. And essentially, they've had this friendship of 20 plus years. And what I love that Jay Kelly does in incredibly smart fashion is we are understanding the character of Ron, played by Sandler, as kind of a stand-in for a younger Jay Kelly. By that, he has a young family. He has a daughter and son at home. And we see him starting to miss parts of his life to dedicate himself to his professional career and dedicate himself fully to Jay. So you're seeing the mistakes that Jay made that he's now regretting in the course of the action. We see Ron making some of these same mistakes, and he has to now kind of grapple with what this means. And they do it through this Europe trip of two men who have to come to terms with their lives. I don't really want to get into spoilers. However, I am going to talk about the ending of this film. So if you want to click away, come back after you've seen Jay Kelly. For those curious, I am giving this film 4.5 out of 5 stars. But let's talk about the ending. Part of the magic of this movie, and it's also the part that makes me believe that this movie is not about the glory of Hollywood, is this movie quite literally comes about as close as you can to breaking the fourth wall without doing so, actually. As this film's plot engine is Jay receiving a Career Achievement Award in Italy. And in this moment, when we're in Italy, when we're at this festival, and we are quite literally watching George Clooney watching himself on screen. And it's quite literally real clips of George Clooney's filmography. From his early days in ER to Ocean's 11 to The Descendants, Michael Clayton, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Like, it's all in this film. As we, the audience in the film is watching, it's technically a montage of Clooney celebrating his career, or in the case, it's Jay Kelly celebrating his career. But what I love about this film and the tragedy of this film is everything that we've learned about Jay. This for him is a tragedy. And this is, and I guess, like I said, it's pretty heavy spoilers, I guess you could say. The final line of this movie is, I believe, the first line Jay speaks in this film, which is, "Can I have another shot?" Which is him looking directly into the camera, basically bearing out his soul and saying he failed as a father and he achieved fame and wealth and he'd take it all back. He's an empty vessel. It's a tragic life for him. Nothing will ever truly be resolved for him. He is full of regret. How many of us can relate to that feeling? How many of our parents, how many of us have had that feeling of just working a job, pushing forward, doing everything and sacrificing everything looking back later and regretting it, having this feeling of time as it's elapsed, and always kind of thinking, I love that what Jake Kelly does so well is he's not a bad guy. He loves his daughters. He just wasn't there enough for them. That doesn't make him an awful human being. It makes him a very bad father and a flawed human being, but it has sympathy for this moment. And what I love about this film as it reaches its resolution is not only is the lack of resolve in this, but also its understanding of once time finally starts to feel like it's slowing down, once you are finally reaching something of what you see as your endpoint, looking back and having that feeling of regret and wanting to do it all over again because you wouldn't make those choices again. And not then being able to and having to just live with that. And how does someone live with that? I think it's a beautifully profound message at the end of Jake Kelly. Again, I love this film. It is a huge recommendation for me. I got to see it in theaters and I think it looks absolutely stunning. I am a big fan of Jake Kelly. This is almost certainly going to be in my top 10 of 2025. And it's a huge recommendation for me. 4.5 out of 5 stars for Jake Kelly. So thank you to everyone who just watched this review of Jake Kelly. Make sure to check out the film on Netflix and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more movie reviews.